Hello, hello. Welcome back to the CoachRx Podcast Network live. Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is having a much better week than we had last week. Lots of challenging things that we are all navigating. But we're keeping it positive, keeping it optimistic, and I'm excited to chat with the coaches today. Let's see what they have going on in their worlds. As a reminder, you can find out more about the podcast network at coachrx.app/podcast-network. You'll get a description of our mission, which is really just elevating the voices of awesome coaches who are really setting the standard for the industry and giving you access to more of them through their unique shows. So I hope that you'll check out the shows in our lineup. We've just got an awesome mix of primarily individual design coaches. Some of them do a little bit more, but most of them are individual design coaches who are just crushing the game and producing some awesome content to give back to other coaches in the industry. So please check out all of the shows. I think today we'll also get to catch up on what's going on some of the shows as well. And I believe David has just joined me, so I'll add him to the stage. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Awesome. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Let's see how there we go. How was the music?
Okay, I was going to say, is that music coming from you or from me?
I had some introduction tunes that
some R&B.
I wish it was Spotify, but it's StreamYard. StreamYard has some built-in music that you can select from.
I feel like it was setting us up for a very chill conversation.
It was. I'm definitely in a workflow vibe this morning. So
there you go.
I was like choosing the beats from the options that they have. That one sounded like the most matching my current mood.
Is that what you listen to when you're workflowing? Are you just like a beats person?
I do have a couple of like Spotify playlists that I will listen to when I'm like in writing mode. And oftentimes I consume a lot of podcasts and things like that. So oftentimes I will have something going, but I typically end up pausing it because I need to like actually be more focused. Like I'm like, I want to listen to what they're saying, but I have to really write right now. Music or honestly quiet. Sometimes quiet is just the better way to go.
I agree.
What's going on your gram? Anything new?
No, I've actually probably had the least content creation over the last like 10 days of a long time.
I did see a cute story this morning of breakfast with your daughter.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
She was playing the fork and the spoon. We're playing a game together. So her fork and her spoon were busy playing. So then my fork was feeding her breakfast. Yeah. Eating my blueberries.
Amazing.
Good. That's our morning routine. She's on my lap and we eat breakfast together every day.
Oh, I love that. Does she really get excited and look forward to the breakfast?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, yes. She likes breakfast food. It's always different, but yeah, today she had blueberry waffles, so she was stoked.
Amazing. Do you end up cooking from scratch every morning, or do you kind of like bulk prep some things and are easier to put things together?
That's the one thing I don't bulk prep. Breakfast is the one where it's like, I'm going to cook some eggs. I'm going to cook up a couple sausages. Usually it's just like protein waffles in the toaster or an English muffin or something like that. So no, that's the one I don't bulk prep typically.
Amazing. Blueberry waffles do sound delicious.
They're good. I don't know if you know this, but Eggo has entered the protein waffle game and it tastes like an Eggo waffle. And so it's really good. Yeah.
And pretty good macros all around, not just the protein.
Don't ask me because I've intentionally avoided that label. I'm like, the fact that your protein waffle tastes just like an Eggo waffle and is so different than other protein waffles probably means there's a lot of chemistry I don't want to understand happening in there, but also whatever.
Yeah. I went through a phase for a long time of like just making a homemade one with like egg whites and some protein powder and a little bit of baking powder and throwing whatever in there. And, you can on a skillet make one pretty quickly too.
Yeah. Like the banana egg white pancake with some cinnamon phases where I do that. Yeah. for sure.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
anything happening in your world this week that the world should know about?
I don't think anything particularly fascinating this week. Just signed up for OPEX method, so I know you and I are talking about that on
Oh, yeah.
Thursday. So I'm stoked for that. That'll be my big like learning endeavor for the last quarter of the year, which will be fun. Um, and then I am legitimately getting closer to recording podcast episodes. I promise. I've been having conversations with co-host about how we get a couple things pre-recorded and then setting up a couple interviews. So we're getting there. Hopefully October.
Amazing. Is co-host one of your fellow coaches on your team or a friend?
Yeah, co-host is Emily.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so I think we'll bring like a good dynamic to how we both approach coaching.
Yeah, that's super awesome. I mean, you guys are on the back end in CoachRx together. You're probably also always in communication about how you're serving clients. So just another
Exactly.
place to kind of expose, dig in, and almost treat it like a business meeting, but for the public.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. There's like, we've worked together for a while, but there's plenty that we don't know about each other too. So the goal is to have a Who is Emily episode and then a Who is David episode where we interview each other with questions the other person doesn't get to see ahead of time. And then we'll start to roll with some interview and just like conversation style podcasts.
I love that. Well, today, this made me think of some of these questions because we had a free masterclass that we hosted yesterday. I can't believe yesterday. It feels like we've had a couple of days in the week already, but yesterday. And it was so awesome to just like connect with the large group. Webinars are always a little bit challenging because we're so used to doing meetings and having the face-to-face time in a meeting environment versus a webinar where you're kind of just like talking to yourself and
Yes.
people engage in the chat. But the chat was actually really lively. So that was awesome to experience. And we talked a lot. We talked about kind of like four unique pillars of individual design coaching. And one of the things we got into talking about was obviously programming and how ID coaches really differentiate themselves holistically. But it got
Yeah.
us talking about what makes a great program. So I thought, let's extend the conversation to you guys who are always delivering great programs and have unique definitions of what a great program is, and just to open that up as thoughts today.
Okay, that's cool. I've been thinking about this a lot as well. So thinking about like what's my definition of good programming, or how would I teach a coach how to program? And I sort of break it down to person-centered on one side and then evidence-based on the other side, right? So it's like a PCEB approach to programming, like without understanding the goals of the person, potentially their limitations, or if you want to flip it into something more positive, like their biggest opportunities for improvement, their access to equipment, their likes and dislikes, what's going to make them happy and feel like it's a good relationship with the coach and with the training plan over the course of 3, 6, 12 months, and vice versa. One of the things I'll always ask during an onboarding with a new client is, what would make you feel like this was a total waste of time and really unhappy with this interaction, so that I can avoid those things. So getting all that person-centered stuff and then taking like an evidence-based or an evidence-informed approach to then creating the plan to get them to that destination in ways that will make it enjoyable and sustainable. Because I'm sure most coaches listening to this are not looking for like 30-day unsustainable transformations. They're looking for like multi-year relationship-based coaching. So yeah, that's kind of my overview of how I think about programming. Is first, you got to learn a lot about the person so that you can then effectively apply what will work to get them where they want to go, without just like slapping them in the face with a textbook hypertrophy program, and not knowing that they actually hate that type of training.
I love that. These were the three main points that Carl shared. And so I thought it might be fun to bring them up and see it. You're right there. Same thoughts. So meets the client where they are, evolves with their goals and their capabilities, and obviously is effective and leads to results.
Yeah. And I think, I think about this a lot because there are trainers in gyms who are, objectively the most educated trainer, and somehow they cannot fill their schedule above 50%, and that's because they're missing the person-centered side of the
Yeah.
coin. And then there's, trainers whose schedule is full and clients who never leave, but you also probably look at those clients and be like, you look exactly the same as you did 2 years ago. Like you're clearly having a great time, but I can't imagine your goal 2 years ago was like, hey, I'd like to show up here 2 years from today looking and feeling the same and just knowing I've had a great time. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't buy that. So, that's the person who's a great people person, but maybe doesn't actually have the objective knowledge to match the plan to the thing that they've learned through their outstanding people skills. So it's really about both.
Yeah. I love that. Um, what is your take on the role that an assessment plays in the ability to deliver, as you said, like something that really meets the client where they are and is personalized to their needs?
Critical, right? It'd be like, if you don't do an assessment, it would be like just opening up Google Maps and hitting like start. And you're like, well, you didn't tell me where we were going. Like I have nothing. I mean, I can draw you a line to somewhere, but I have no idea if that's even the right direction. North, south, east, west, let alone where the destination is. So yeah, assessments are huge. Like from a subjective standpoint, that's when you learn about all those things I just talked about, all the preferences, goals, likes, dislikes, hard stops, favorite things. One of the things we would talk about a lot in PPSC is including something that they would call emotion into the program, which is that final thing that just hits the client like right in the sweet spot. They just love an arm pump. They love to feel like they're going to die on an assault bike. They, as much as you want to tell them it's not that important, if they're not dripping in sweat, they're going to feel like they didn't get a good session. And you can accomplish that in 4 minutes with a Tabata. And again, you need to have the assessment conversation to figure those things out too, to hit them like the heartstrings and make sure that your client feels heard and listened to and cared for. And then also back to the evidence-based side, do they have relatively symmetrical ankle dorsiflexion? If not, how is that going to change their warm-up, their maybe homework for movement preparation, which variation of a squat I'm going to choose, the pain I may anticipate if I make the wrong choice. And that's just one joint that would affect any lower body movement that has a knee flexion component. And I'm talking about the ankle. So a combination of a movement assessment along with my favorite place to start is usually like 5 rep maxes on 4 to 5 different movements to kind of dictate the first block. Yeah, I mean, you can't really overstate how important an assessment is, both subjective and objective. A lot of that for me comes from a physical therapy background. Like that is a required component of an initial evaluation. You need a subjective, objective assessment and plan, right? That's what every evaluation is required to have. And so you just carry that right over to a training session.
I love that. Maybe can you share a little bit about how you think about like initial assessment versus the ongoing assessment, or just as a coach, the mindset that you're always assessing, whether that be through intake or onboarding or consults or data
Yeah,
collection through the training process, just like the mindset that you approach always assessing.
yeah. So I think it's been an interesting evolution for me as a coach. And honestly, CoachRx has helped with this. By default, I'm not a huge objective data collection person. I'm like a constantly watching and thinking and giving feedback type of coach, which is challenging online. So having some of the built-in parts of CoachRx where you can get a visual and you can sort of like tag certain movements that are almost weekly assessments and giving you like trends to look at and share has been really helpful for me. And I've been taking advantage of that a lot recently. But my overall thought process would be, if you're going to do a good initial assessment, then it would be on some level wasted if you're not reassessing or retesting, right? Like doing an initial test is only useful so that you can do a follow-up test and see if the plan worked. So if it's movement assessment, and let's stick with the ankle, right? One ankle has 25% more dorsiflexion than the other. And I know the person has the goal of a certain amount on a barbell back squat. That asymmetry is going to show up more and more and more the more volume and load that back squat has in the program. So I should have some element of my training plan that is directly focused on improving ankle dorsiflexion for the sake of then improving the goal they have of squatting a certain amount of weight. So not only do I think there should be, your 5 rep max, and then 6 weeks later retesting that 5 rep max to see if the program worked. And as a good coach, it's going to work and you can see the improvement. But it's okay, 5 weeks ago, you had 65 pounds on the seated chest press, and today you did 80. That's a 25% improvement. That's huge, right? And that's it's something to celebrate, even if you don't necessarily feel like you're that much stronger or look like you're that much stronger. It's the fact is you are 25% stronger, and it's only been 6 weeks. Imagine what's going to happen in 6 months. But then also having a plan to retest some of those potential joint or tissue limitations or side to side muscle endurance asymmetries. Another favorite for me is a Copenhagen side plank for time, right and left. Not a lot of people train adductors, but they're involved in every lower body movement to a really high degree for stabilization, high injury risk for barbell athletes. So muscle endurance is a really easy thing to test side to side. And then so is mobility.
I love that. Blake just jumped in, so let's add him to the stage with us.
Yeah.
Hey.
What's up, guys?
How are you? Have you guys met?
No.
I'm Blake. How you doing,
Blake,
man?
David Blake.
Good, man. How are you?
Nice to meet you. Good. Am I interrupting, or I just want to jump in and see what you guys are doing? I keep missing these.
No, I'm so glad that you joined us. I mean, I saw you in the note in the chat saying that you wanted to jump in today. So we're happy to have you. David and I were just talking about assessment. So we would love to get your thoughts on kind of the role of assessment in your process and or how you think about assessment in a way that differentiates you as a coach.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the first thing I really want to know is what the client's goals are, because then we can build the assessment around that, right? So obviously, I'm sure you guys already talked about that, but knowing where we're trying to get going and then kind of reverse engineering what the starting process looks like is really what assessment is used for. So, and I think things like the FMS and OPEX's style of assessment is really good for just general pop where you're starting with somebody, but getting more nuanced with things. So if somebody wants to get good at ollie lifting, or if somebody really wants to get good at marathon running, how to have proper assessments for different energy systems along with not just mobility. And then how to reverse engineer from there on what appropriate pacing would be, so I think in a really simple, good one that we all probably have used is, OPEX's 5K row, breakdown. And then just looking at, okay, you could go at that a couple different angles. Do you want to subtract kind of their 500 meter pace by 2 or 3 this week? Or do you want to write in the, the meters that you want them to hit this week and kind of gauge their time? I've played around with different things like that just to kind of create more of the artisticness in program design, but I'm still learning all this stuff. I'd love to hear David's thoughts, but yeah. And then I've also been challenged, I got a little bit away from, this might sound really stupid, but I went through a 2 or 3 year period where I didn't think mobility was a little overrated. There were so many mobility gurus online. I think that I became calloused. And so I think I'm coming back around and kind of hopefully getting back in the middle again, where I do find it very important. And I was challenged on that actually in this most recent mentorship I did with Mayhem's performance team. And a lot of those guys are like former OPEX guys too. So, or CCP guys, but, just going through, starting with just, can you even do an overhead squat with a PVC pipe in your hand before you start putting barbells in people's hands? And, I think sometimes we as coaches can want to get people to play the game of whatever they're trying to train for too early. And I think the mark of a good coach is making someone earn that through the assessment. I just find that most people get better results when we do that. But what's your take, David?
So I think mobility is important. With the physical therapy background I have, maybe mobility is important so that, like you're saying, you can make the appropriate entry point to something like an overhead squat. It's not that everyone has to have 180 degrees of shoulder flexion and be able to do like 15 perfect shoulder cars before you can even lift a weight. But it is like, I need to understand the mobility of the joints involved in the goal movements you're asking me to help you get better at, so that I can figure out where we start, give you a rational explanation for why we're not going straight to barbell overhead squats, and like kind of paint you a picture of like the step-by-step directions to get there. And like what you're saying is, it'll help me not just sort of subjectively waffle on why I'm making the decisions I'm making, and then like get more pushback on like, why won't you just let me do the thing I want to do? It's like, based on what we learned, we're going to make a lot of progress. You're going to get more muscular, you're going to get more strong, you're going to move better, all the things that you think an overhead squat is going to do for you. And then eventually you'll be able to overhead squat and it'll get even better. But you can accomplish 90% of what you're telling me you want to do without that overhead squat. And the chances of injury, taking all 90% away and just laying you up for however long, is not worth it. It's like, we have a very specific phase by phase plan. And as like, from a business standpoint, like, that helps me justify why at this point I require one-on-one clients 6 months minimum. Because it's like, we've had this phase by phase, 26-week plan based on where you are, what you want to do. It's probably going to take a year, but can you give me at least 6 months, and like, I'll lay it out for you. Like, what does the first month look like? What does the second month look like? What is month 3 and 4 going to add from a progression standpoint? Make sure you understand you're going to be working hard the whole time, and we just want to get you to where you want to go effectively without a flat tire along the way that we could have avoided pretty easily.
That's good.
I love that. Brandon, I'm so glad you joined us. We're going a little different today. We're group chatting.
Okay.
Brandon, I don't know if you've
What are we
met
talking about?
Blake, Brandon.
What's up,
What's up, Brandon? How are you?
I know you've met David. We're talking about assessment. So while I don't want to like put you on the spot, but while you guys are all here, I think you'll be able to see if I pop this up on screen. We had a masterclass on Monday. Carl brought up this point and really just was talking a lot about how, as individual design coaches, your approach to always assessing, always collecting intelligence, always personalizing the program differentiates you guys from other coaches in the market or trainers in the market that may not take the same level of care in individualization of programs, but how assessment might increase your value. So I thought it'd be interesting to get your guys' take on these 3 points of obviously providing your clients context, giving you the ability to personalize designs for your clients, and then delivering unique value to your client. Blake, to your point, adding additional layers of assessment based on the specific goal that they have. I don't know who wants to jump in there, but maybe Brandon, since you haven't shared anything yet, but your take in general on like the role of assessments in your process.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely changed a little bit on mine, because I used to be like super, super heavy into having like a super thorough assessment. But I found that like nowadays when I work with most people, my assessment process is more about just like a couple basic things, like making sure they're competent in some patterns, making sure they know, like, not to be vulgar, but like their ass from their elbow, right? Like, make sure they know that like what they can differentiate a couple big things. A big thing for me is like, understanding their body to the point that like, if I ask a question, can they do it, right? But because I think I think sometimes with the assessments, they can be like so much up front, and then none of, like, I've had some experiences where I've seen some people that I've worked with who are like have these thorough assessments, and then they just like either never get used, or they're like so much information that it's just like an overload of information that either overwhelms the person or overwhelms the coach. So I think like I've tried to narrow mine down to very specific like set of things where it's like, you know, how well can they put their hands over their head if they can? Can they stand on one leg? If so, like how long and what positions, that sort of thing. What's their core kind of look like? Core stability, movement, that sort of thing as well. And then, because I think a lot of the stuff too comes out obviously when they move, and I think a lot of that stuff's not going to come out until they start moving. And I think a lot of it's very environment dependent, meaning like movement dependent. Like, you know, obviously in a relaxed setting, someone's going to be able to put their hands pretty comfortably like over their head, but then we start to add in, you know, angles or weight or things like that. And obviously with the assessment, we can see that to a certain degree. But I think that a lot of the stuff just happens as we progress the movement patterns. So I've kind of dialed it back just a bit, so it's a little bit more specific, and then really start to like kind of just see how they move as things go. Because, you know, I think, like I said, I think a lot of times the assessment becomes a little overwhelming, but I've tried really hard to make it very like quick, easy, to the point, so someone can do it, take it, get what they need from it. I get what I need from it, and then we just start moving. Because I think again, a lot of that stuff's going to come out in the first couple weeks of just moving during exercise. You know, obviously there are specifics where it's like I've worked with athletes who have, you know, a couple weeks to a fight, or they need to get better at something where it's like, hey, I need X improved, where it's like my overall strength or my speed or endurance, whatever it might be. Then we're going to like have a specific like assessment that I'll have for that. And then, you know, but generally, like I said, I think a lot of stuff just comes out as we move.
I love that. Just to think about this a little bit more, and anyone feel free to jump in. I mean, obviously there's an initial assessment period where you're taking into consideration things that you've collected in intake, things that you're collecting in an initial consult, plus any initial screening that you might do from a movement standpoint. And then on the OPEX side of things, we always have body, move, and work. And then, of course, in intake, you're obviously collecting intelligence on any lifestyle factors that need to be taken into consideration. So I guess two-part question. For those of you, I know all of you are working both in person and remote, which is cool because we've had a lot more people on the remote side lately. But how are you thinking about the collection of data in all of these buckets, both initially and ongoing? And how does that differentiate for you if it's an in-person client versus a remote client or a hybrid client?
Can I answer that before I jump off?
Yeah,
so
go for it.
I think it's much, much easier. I think what Brennan's saying is basically like you've changed the distribution of your assessment. It's not like you're doing less assessment. It's just you're doing less of it on day one and trusting that every session as a coach, you're assessing everything that you're seeing and then just making adjustments as you go, right? Which I think is probably the way to go. I think excessive amounts of upfront assessment are probably needed, like you said, for those very specific, and then maybe more so for online where you don't get to see everything every time, 3 times a week. And so a more thorough multi-step assessment is typically what I'll do for my online clients. Like I'll send a virtual movement assessment where I'm asking them to film like 7 specific things and send me specific angles of each of them so that I can then ask follow-up questions, right? Like the squat didn't look good. Okay, now I'm going to send you 2 more videos because I want to assess ankle dorsiflexion and hip internal rotation. Can you send those back to me? And then again, maybe earlier on in their online work with me, I'm asking for a higher volume of training videos to make sure that whatever I'm giving them as movement prep is working. And I have that opportunity to be a little closer to in person. And then less and less of that as I start to just trust that they do well. We introduce a new pattern. Hey, for the next 2 weeks, I want you to film every set of Bulgarian split squats from the front and from the side. Because we just finished a block of, goblet squats to a box, and now we're going to single leg. But then it's in person, to me, it's just kind of like very free flowing and just kind of trusting that whatever I see, I'm going to be able to make a split-second decision about what else do I need to look at, how do we adjust that on the fly, and then I can just kind of change things from there. So I think as many things go online, to me, the biggest differentiation is in person, you can solve problems in real time. Online, you have to anticipate problems before they happen. And that just takes more assessment, right? It takes more planned questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me too is like I started doing in person is essentially taking what I would do in an assessment and just doing it for like a warm up for like their first day, and then essentially like I'm just seeing what they're doing right before the workout. I have an idea of like what I want to do with somebody based on the consultation. And what I was going to add before, which I should have said, is like, I think the consultation is more important than the actual like physical assessment. Like I would say like finding out the most information possible like about them before you actually see them move is probably more important than like any type of physical assessment. But once you have the consultation done, and then like I said, in person, I'll just do like the warm-ups, literally like everything that I would probably do in a movement assessment. And then I'll be able to just see, like he said, you know, like in real time, like, okay, probably not gonna be able to do this. Maybe we'll add a slant board or something under their feet so they can get a little bit deeper. You know, maybe we're only benching at like a certain angle, or maybe we're not going all the way overhead, like whatever it might be. And you can change that in real time. Online, you know, I think online's obviously tough because it's very reliant on the other person to kind of drive a lot of the feedback, right? Because you can give them everything, but they're not sending videos. If they're not understanding like, you know, how to do a lot of that stuff, then it's going to be very hard to have that back and forth. But I think with like you do have to anticipate, you do have to assume, you know, what the average person probably isn't going to be able to do. And then once you do enough sessions in person and online, you're going to start to realize, okay, this person's probably going to struggle with like X, Y, Z. And then like there might be something that comes out on top of that. They're like, okay, well, you know, we'll also have to look at this. But I also think that one of my big things with the people who try to go online is obviously like you need to do enough of those in person to know, even like consider to know like what goes on online. Because I think a lot of people now, they go straight to online, or they try to go straight online, and they have no in-person experience, no communication experience. Because in my opinion, obviously like the communication's even more online because you're not seeing this person. So you have to be on it even more. You have to reach out to them even more. You have to ask deeper and more thoughtful questions. You have to get them to respond and then put in all the weights and do all the things that you're not there to see. So it's just, there's so many layers on top of actually well, I want to rephrase. If you want to do it the right way, you have to do all that stuff. Like if you don't want to do it the right way, then you can do whatever, you know? But that's definitely like a big thing. Like you have to have something at least that's going to show them like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Look at it. And then you can start to program based off of that, which is, in my opinion, way harder. But people seem to want to push in that direction for the freedom.
That's funny you say that, because there, like to some extent, there is freedom, but then there's
appreciate you, David.
See yes.
But there is an illusion that there, you know, you still get, it's still work on remote. You know, I have a lot of remote clients, and yeah, I can choose to do it in the afternoon or in the morning more often. So there's some of that, but there's, I mean, you still have to set boundaries on vacation. You still have to be able to make sure all their programs are done 2 weeks out. If you're leaving, like it's not as cush as people make it sound, especially like we'll help you get 50 clients in like 2 days kind of people on social media. I agree with you too, wholeheartedly, that you should do at least like 100 like in-person assessments before you ever even think of going online. Like
years. There's just, I really think you should have to do years before you can go online. But
yeah, I'm just saying like as a bare minimum, at least 100, because like you're going to be able to see like so many things that that'll drive questions for you as a coach that you just don't know, that you would love to get like a better look at and assess more. That it'd be too difficult to do that online. So, and then also just like, especially depending on the population you're working with, like when it comes to assessment, if you're working with more Gen Pop and you haven't worked with a lot of people online, like then you don't know a lot of the common mistakes where people aren't lying to you. They're just not conveying the right information. So you don't know how to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
But
so
like when
they literally don't know. Yeah.
Because they just don't know, you know? And so it's not like they're trying to, you know, avoid some sort of like diet. I'm at confession and you're my priest, and I don't want to tell you that I ate donuts. It's not like that. It's more like that I think I'm eating healthy, and then like to have that conversation just through texting on CoachRx can get a little like like if you don't have the right questions to ask, you're just going to be completely like, I don't know why the program's not working. It's like, well, maybe you don't know how to measure how much butter you're actually putting on there, and you forgot to tell me that. But like if we were in person and we could have that conversation more often, we could get that. So
this is an interesting point, Blake. You're making me think of something, because you guys are obviously both ambassadors. So you're both in the lifestyle trends and the health data beta right now. And one of the things we keep having internal discussions about is the upside, obviously, for coaches, even if you're not prescribing lifestyle, which I hope all of our coaches are leaning into prescribing lifestyle as a foundation. But even if you're not prescribing, with the new trends dashboard, and if a client has wearables and any health data connected, you have so much more transparency into what's actually happening with just basic metrics, movement, sleep quality, HRV, recovery, all those things. Whereas if you're relying on clients to log these things, even though their intentions might not be to be dishonest, right? They might say, you might give them a step range of 8K and they hit 7,500 and they're marking it as complete, and they're thinking I'm going to make it up tomorrow or whatever. But on average, if the data were accurately being displayed to you, you would see that there was a deficit from where you wanted them to be by a certain number of a certain thousand steps over the last several weeks, which would be limiting impact of the results. And now you have full transparent view into that without putting the pressure on the client to log everything manually or to be fully transparent about some of these things. So just wanted to get your guys' take on, like, how do you think that is going to change the game for you guys as coaches, having more visibility? And or do you think clients are going to want to give that visibility to you?
I've had mixed reviews with it, honestly. Like I've like, not with the beta, just like wearables. I have like a love or hate relationship with them, because I think the biggest thing they need to do is like at some point give an option for the client not to see it. Like it would be nice if just the coach could see it, because I've had a lot of instances where I've talked to like some of my higher end athletes, and I've been like, yo, I'd love to see like this and this, and a lot of them are like, I don't want to see that, because like if it's red, then I'm not going to want to try, like it's just going to ruin my day. And I've also had like general population clients that are just like, well, I don't know what any of this means anyways, so like, should I even look at it? And it's like, well, yes, because let me explain it to you. And then they're like, okay, like I don't really know, and it's just like a lot that they either don't want to deal with or like look at. So I wish there was something, like I hope in the future they have something.
There is actually, well, right now, I mean, obviously with what we're doing, I mean, you can, if they just connect their health data and anything that any devices they have, or any
like
data that's coming in from their phone, right? That health data, it may not be 100% accurate, right? If they're not wearing an additional wearable, or they're not logging nutrition through one of the nutrition apps, and that's not being fed back into health data, then you may not have pure visibility. But yeah, you could absolutely have them connect and then just not view trends.
But yeah, so I think like that's a good like thing. And then I also think on top of that is just like I think wearables, obviously, as they get more accurate, which I would hope they would, more consistent, more, I guess, I don't know what the next step is, like, because it's really hard to obviously track all that stuff outside of the body. I just think it's really hard to obviously track something inside the body with that. But as they get more accurate, it's just going to be better information, better data. And then I think we're going to be able to better see like how a program's actually working in real time, as opposed to just waiting to see like, does a number go up? Does the number go down? Does all this stuff happen at the end of the month? We can see like, all right, this week, clearly we up the reps, up the sets, and everything else is going down. Like, all right, maybe that's not the right, like being able to see that stuff in real time, I think is going to be really useful in the right capacity. So I'm excited.
The thing I'm the most excited about, which I don't know if you guys have played with yet, this only I think was updated last week in your beta view, but if you're on your trends dashboard in the client profile, click on that. There's insights that are now being surfaced to you, so you'll see the trend line. But then if the trend line is triggering some kind of prescription and insight or recommendation, the system is going to then tell you, hey, coach, you might want to consider this adjustment,
Cool. Okay.
which I think
Yeah.
is the thing I'm the most excited about for you guys.
Yeah, that's gonna be ideal.
That is cool. Yeah, I'm with you on I'm doing so Bain is my coach, so we've been tracking through chronometer on there, but he was even asking me to hook up my Whoop, but I haven't worn my Whoop probably since, I don't know, March, because I got sleep insomnia from it, because like it started to stress me out mentally to always be like freaking out about my sleep. And that's, I just took it off and I could actually go back to sleep. So I actually had the exact same conversation with him, which is like, I'll be willing to wear it for you to track some of my data. I just don't want to know it. Like I need to kind of go at it as like something you're looking at. And if you want to make tweaks based on what you see, great. I actually think that could be really helpful. It's a conversation that you have to have with the client that, if they want to do that. But I do think where wearables have been helpful with my coaching is when I can't get people buy-in from alcohol, and then they see the numbers, and then it's like now they finally trust me. Like you could speak to them and all the consultations and just kind of talk with them about stuff, but until they really saw the real data, how it affected their body, they weren't really sobered to maybe reconsidering some lifestyle changes with that. So I think that more assessment data we can have, the more we can kind of coach from different angles, I'd say, where it's like you have more things to play with to kind of help the client achieve more vitality, because some people are just going to want to, pretend that you don't know what you're talking about or have, cognitive dissonance with what we're saying. And then they see maybe something that's more accurate real time with them. And it's a little bit more sobering to the reality of, oh crap, that really did mess me up for the last 3 days. Maybe I shouldn't drink on Sunday night, that much. So I do think there's a lot of good that it can do with that. And it really helps because I don't know if you've ever run into this, but it's just really frustrating when people blame the program design when the assessment of lifestyle was really most of the issue. Where you're like, I've watched people go through crappy programs and get better results because they do so much good stuff on the outside, and I've seen people do
You're
really great.
reading my mind, Blake. You're reading my mind, because that's where I was going next, was like we've talked about lifestyle. Well, obviously BLGs have been in our vocabulary for 25 plus years. But when it comes to lifestyle design, like for an ID coach, like truly being the foundation, where you're really focused on creating these habits first, and also progressing habits like you would progress training, so that the client's not overwhelmed and trying to fix 6 things at once, right? But really going deep on like, let's resolve and create consistency and rhythm in 1 or 2 of these habits at a time, understand why, go deeper there, and then progress them. But I wanted to just share this and maybe steer the conversation in that direction. And how much of a role does lifestyle design play in how you're programming and coaching clients today?
Yeah, it's literally like I was having this conversation with Mike, my I guess you could call my partner in the Coach Connect. We were talking about, obviously, like from the coach's perspective and like a client perspective, it's just like, there's 23 other hours in the day, obviously, that they're not with us. And I think this is a very common conversation that goes on inside of coaching, where it's like, obviously the hour with us is great and it's the best part of their day and that sort of thing, which is awesome. Like I love having people be excited to like come train and be a part of what I'm doing or what we're doing, right? But I think obviously when you're not there, that's when it matters, right?
And when it's hardest for them, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like when you're not in the presence of somebody else, when someone's not looking at you, when someone's not watching you, when someone's not telling you like, hey, you just did that wrong, hey, that was really good, you're kind of just like, oh, well, I'm just going to do whatever, and you end up doing that because you could still work out and not obviously get results, right? And most of the time, it's if you actually look at the rest of their day, it's sedentary, or they're not eating, like he said, they're not sure how to measure a stick of butter, or they're not like they have the scale on the wrong measurement and they're measuring in whatever instead of what you actually asked them to measure in. Or they don't know how to, like, you know, they're eating ground beef, but they're not realizing they're eating 80-20 instead of 95-5 or whatever the measurements are. But like those little things where it's like you make those wrong decisions for 23 hours, then the hours you're almost like you have to play catch up, and you're already starting the day from behind because everything else was, you know, just not done right. Whereas like you come into those 23 hours with proper nutrition, proper sleep, you know, decision-making skills, stress management, then the session actually becomes like, you know, positive session, right? How many sessions do clients come into and they're already in like a either negative mindset or a negative physical state? And then you're having them do, you know, hard training, progressive training, looking to either increase, you know, aerobic capacity or, you know, strength numbers or whatever. And it either doesn't go right, or after a month or two, something pops up, or they're getting burned out, whatever it might be. And it's because of the other 23 hours that they're obviously living the rest of their life that's not producing like the success that maybe the workout is, right? But obviously the first thing they're going to look to is like, my workout's not working, right? Or like my program's not working. This is where, you know, because again, a lot of people don't understand when you walk into a gym and you do a program, right? Like you're breaking down your body, right? Like, yes, it's building, we're getting stronger, we're increasing like fitness qualities, but at the end of the day, like we have to recover from that work. And then that's what gets us better at the end of it, right? So, you know, when you go into a workout, you're damaging your body, and then you're doing everything else that's damaging your body, and then you're expecting to be better, and you're just finding that loop. And that's where a lot of people then
stress bucket's getting full.
Yeah, you look at the coach or you look at the program, and you know, obviously there's accountability aspect to it too, where it's like, hey, is it me or is it this guy? And most of the people are gonna go, it's this guy, right?
What are some ways that you guys assess current lifestyle? I mean, obviously there's intake and consultation, but is that the majority of how you're gathering intelligence to assess kind of baseline where someone's at with the core BLGs, or what's worked for you guys?
Mine's always been in the beginning, like my biggest thing is just their priorities. Like I love that question of like asking what their priorities are in life. And then, because I like to ask these questions back to back. Like, what do you think your priorities are in life right now? And then I ask them their daily schedule, because they can lie about their priorities. They're like, oh, fitness is my priority, eating healthy is my priority. And then you're like, okay, cool. Now, like, tell me about your day. They're like, oh, well, you know, I got to get to work at, you know, 9 and I wake up at 8:15. If I have time, I'll eat, but most of the time I don't. And then lunch, I'll go out to eat. And then at night, you know, I get home and I have to take my kids here, and here. If I can have time to work out, I'll try to go work out, but maybe twice a week. And it's like, okay, well, clearly these aren't matching up, right? So it's like, where do we need to fix this, and how do we need to change this so that what you think your priorities are versus what your priorities actually are match up, so that there's an awareness thing, and then they're actually aware of what they need to fix. You know, that's been the biggest thing for me, because I think that always helps. But yeah, that'd probably be like my number one thing I've asked.
That's great. I really go off the person. Like if I get in a consult and I get a feel that this person just is really busy, their main goal is they really want to get, you know, healthier, and their stress level's super high. I can have them, I really do the whole look for the lowest hanging fruit, like, cause we need some early wins. Like my first like 90 days is how many early, you know, easy early wins can we get, that will start building like momentum. Cause I always say people hire you out of faith, and then they stay because you get them results, or they're connected to you. Like it's one of those two things. And the thing that I found is I've gone anywhere from, we're not going to track at all any kind of food. We're just going to literally just move this month, right? Because that's the thing that I feel like that they can handle, and they'll probably get some sort of results from just moving more, to text me all of your food, because I can tell this person doesn't know what they're doing, and I'm going to have to give them more hands-on. And it's a much faster process to just be like, add another scoop of cottage cheese, or sub the bread for rice, whatever, like thing, kind of just conversations that I can do quickly throughout the day. And then there's some people that just are really disciplined, and you can tell right out the gate they've done some of this before. And I don't mind actually going right into some tracking with those types of people. If that's what they really want to do. I'm thinking mostly nutrition, because that's like one of the big ones that I felt like we were kind of talking about earlier. But yeah. I love that you put that chart back up, because I think it's so easy to forget starting with habits and alignment and just jumping right into processes. And people haven't built that bottom foundation out yet. And I've been full-time coaching for 7 years almost, and I still forget to get people to do that all the time. Just because they come in with so much like, I'm ready for it. So to me, a lot of times assessment is telling me what you're actually ready for. And assessment is really actually helping me drive best possible place to start. And if I learned anything over like this last mentorship, it really was start your programming, nutrition, everything, where it's actually too simple in the beginning, so you can progress people to something that that you have a place to actually go in 2 or 3 weeks, that they can still move them up. Because if you start too hard too early, where are you going to go from there? Like, what's the progression, right? And we've all been stuck in that at some point with a client. We're like, crap, right? So just a great little.
And that's not easy, right? Because the client usually
Yeah.
is the one trying to rush the process, and they give me more, coach, I can handle more. So
Yeah.
I guess, are there any strategies that you all have used to encourage that patience?
I just had one recently, so I'll just go real quick since it's on my mind. I had a client that signed up 3 weeks ago, and he was a really good guy. I knew he was going to be a great client, but he definitely had like that business mindset of, I don't know if you're going to be the right coach for me. We'll see. Like, kind of trying to put the pressure on me, which I kind of like that a little bit, to be honest. But he was going with. And then after 2 weeks, it was last week, he said to me, I just thought I'd be a little further along. And he was being genuine. We can all laugh at that. It's 2 weeks. But I just had I've gotten to a point in my career where I can be more confident and straight shooter with people. And I texted him, and he really respected it. I just said, you didn't get to where you're at in 2 weeks, and it's going to take a lot longer than 2 weeks to get out of where you're at. And I said, you're doing great for your first, but you got to keep trusting the process. And month one, I set the expectations. Month one is just knocking the rust off. You haven't done anything. You are so rusty on everything that we're just trying to get you moving more and trying to think a little bit more about whole foods in all of your diet. That's it. And I said, we won't really start seeing whether or not this is working until 90 days. Because I feel like if people will know around 90 days, if we've picked the right assessment and protocol and prescription, but just giving myself time to buy in. But that's always my one go. It's like, hey man, like, expectations is the root of all anger, and your expectations are way off. So you're gonna be angry, but I'm telling you, it's not realistic. I do this for a living. So,
Oh man,
also
you're
think
hitting
it's
home
like-
with me.
yeah,
I was going to say, I think it's also, there's so much, like, people obviously come into it, right? Like your dude comes in and is like, oh, I thought I'd be farther along, right? But they think of it just as a workout, not like, and I just had a episode of my podcast about this. Literally, it's like called The First 30 Days with a New Client. And shameless plug. But anyways.
No, I was going to ask you both about your pods too, so go for it.
But so like the first 30 days is literally like setting up for the next, like, say 6 months, right? Because in my mind, the first 30 days is like the lowest important thing is like the workouts. The most important thing is learning the language, understanding what the program looks like, understanding what sets and reps look like, understanding what tempo is, understanding what effort looks like, understanding what gym equipment looks like, understanding the habit of like getting to the gym and actually showing up. Because it doesn't matter really. Like, obviously a lot of people have that stuff, but you have to show them that stuff first, so that when the time comes to actually actually do what you need to do, which is, like you said, 90 days down the line, not 14 days. Like, it's just, obviously there's people with unrealistic expectations. I think it's really important to, I think we talked about this maybe last week, or maybe I talked about something. I don't know. I was talking to somebody, like, set the expectation early of like, hey, listen, like, this first month is going to be a little bit, you're going to leave being like, oh, is that it? Or like, you know, I literally sit down with my clients. I'm gonna be like, you might have a session the first 2 weeks and be like, is that it? Like, is there anything else? You know, you're going to leave feeling good, leave feeling like you can do more, leave excited to come back, leave where you're like, hey, I can sit on the toilet the next day, right? Because we've all had that experience with a client. And then from there, like that first month, at the end of it, you should be able to say like, hey, we're going to do a deadlift today at 95. And they're going to be like, okay, cool, I'll go set it up, right? Or they're going to walk into the gym and you're going to be like, hey, hit your warm up, I'll be right there. And they're going to get through it with no problem. Right?
Yeah.
Those little things are like so important to actual success in fitness, where 6 months down the line, like let's say your client, you kind of like, well, you bought into your client, you're like 2 weeks, I'm not as far as I was, right? Where he gets in 3 months might be like 10-pound weight loss or 10-pound strength, whatever, when it could have been 10x because he learned these little basics in that first month, right? And I think people really forget to look 6 months down the line and be like, okay, well, if I can understand all this, how much further along am I going to be? And a lot of times it feels like it's 2 steps back to take 1 step forward, right?
It's like the tortoise and the hare scenario, right?
Yeah. That 2 steps back in the beginning is more like long-term, like 10 steps forward in 6 months, right? Where it's like all these barriers, all these things that probably could have gotten in the way are no longer a problem or an obstacle. And you're just flowing because you took that little, you know, patient step in the beginning.
And the confidence that builds after that first 30 days, and in being able to reiterate how much they have learned, and the fact that, hey, maybe they were nervous to even enter a gym and didn't know any of these things, but in 30 days, like you said, they're setting up for the deadlift. They know how to warm up on their own. They can confidently enter the space and feel like they know what to do.
That's huge. The hardest part for most people is literally stepping foot into the gym, right? So it's like, and a lot of it's because like it's intimidating, the music, the people, the machines, whatever. So it's like, if you can knock that out, then like you got the most, like usually the hardest part for most people, which is just like, hey, I can step foot in the gym by myself, whether he's here or not, or she, you know, whoever your trainer is, but like whether they're here or not, I can step foot in the gym now. That's a huge barrier that you just removed. And now you can actually get to the fitness stuff, right? Because even think about it, you know, someone can say like, hey, I wish I was further along in 2 weeks. And it's like, well, dude, you don't even know how to do a deadlift or a squat. So like, how are you supposed to progress something you haven't had experience with, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously there's situations where people are further along, but
how do you keep people encouraged while also telling them the hard reality of how far off they really are? Like is the whole first month. And then also educating, like, I love what you said. They need to learn the language and the flow of just kind of what does this even look like? Like when you come in, what's the expectations? Where is everything? What is, you know, what machine is that? So yeah, I always say too, you know, speaking of assessments, since that's what we're on, you know, for online, the biggest thing that assessment does for me is just tells me what we're not going to waste our time doing. Like it's just keeping it this most simple form of what we need to get done to hit the goal is really it. Because it's like, hey, if I know, like I just did an assessment last Friday on somebody, and it was like they did a split squat. They technically could do it, but it looked like trash. You know, it was like, were they strong enough? Yeah. Was like the range of motion good enough? But like, did they know what they were doing? No, they didn't know what they're doing. So what am I not going to do? I'm not going to like load them for week 1 with that. Like I'm probably going to actually give him like just some leg extensions and stuff at his gym and just get him moving his legs and get nice and sore and leg press and stuff like that. I'm not even going to try to coach that right now because he's got a million other things going on with thinking of his nutrition, trying to get to the gym, all that. That like the last thing I really want to do is just start coaching you on how to cue you on how to do a better split squat. He doesn't care. He just wants to feel good and move good. So they're like, but that's like me screwing up for 7 years to get to that point to be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Just give them leg press and other stuff.
7 years to realize it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter as much. Like, you know, there's a lot more freedom in there. And I think that's the thing I've evolved in as a coach the most is like having that freedom to not be like, why do I have to make him do this? Like, I don't. Because he doesn't care and it doesn't hit his goal, and we can work around it and make this simpler. And there's probably gonna be, like you said, a bigger 10x experience because we did that. So yeah, that's gold. That was good.
Amazing. Well, you guys are awesome. I appreciate you both joining me so much today. And I just wanted to give you both encouragement and let you know that you and all of our coaches are in my thoughts and prayers daily right now, because I know there's so much darkness around us, but you guys get to be lights. And you get to give people a lot of hope and a lot of positivity right now. And especially emotions are all over the place. So just know that. And I just thank you guys for being awesome and being such a good representation of what it means to be a professional coach in this crazy world that we live in.
Let's go.
Yep. Appreciate it. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, guys. Chat soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. I'm going to close out now. Remember, our comments are always open. We haven't gotten a lot of comments in the last couple of episodes, but if you leave comments on any of the rewatches that are live on the channel, I'll pick them up there and I'll carry over questions into the following week. So thanks for hanging with us. Be sure to head over to the podcast network page on CoachRx.app and check out all the shows. I know Brandon mentioned a little bit about his show that just released on the first 30 days of working with the client, but there are a ton of episodes releasing every single week. So check them all out, subscribe to the shows, and jump in our comments. I'll see you guys next week. I hope everyone has a great close to their week since we're only on Tuesday. Chat soon.